Hello again. Um, I've been watching things on the internet as I usually do during my day, and I've seen a lot of talk about the Second Amendment, what it's for, where, what it governs, who it's supposed to govern. So I thought I'd give you my point of view. Now, I grew up in a time and a place where it was not uncommon to see guys coming to school. If they had a license, they drove to school, and it was not uncommon to see, one or two shotguns or rifles hanging in the back window. In fact, I knew guys that they'd come in. They had a trap line where they trapped furs, and they'd come in straight from there to school, and they'd keep their 22 in their locker. Nothing was said. Now, if you did that, you'd be tried as an adult and some sort of be labeled as some sort of terrorist threat. Yes, it was a different time. The Second Amendment, when I was in school, we were told, well, that's just an that's just an amendment for hunters, and that's what I believed. You know, I I didn't have access to the internet. I couldn't. Very few of us had ever even read the Constitution, so I really didn't know what it was about. As I got older, I heard other people talk about it, and for and against. And I see many people out there very ill informed. They think that the Second Amendment is, for hunters, so they can go out and, you know, shoot game. And even now, that's not an argument. They want to ban all guns. The Second Amendment was written in a time where we had, at the time, a major superpower. Call it what it is, even though Britain was the major superpower. Along with France and Spain. Um, the Second Amendment was written with the idea in mind. Yes, people need to hunt for their food and provide for their families, but also it was designed to allow the population of the country, in the event that their their government became totalitarian, or you know the first, from the Romans on up, every totalitarian regime, the first thing they did was disarm their citizens, because then they were defenseless. Now, did the founding fathers only mean, flintlock muskets and sabers? No. They they were smart enough to craft a constitution and start a country that has lasted for 250 years. They weren't so stupid to think that the technology involved in defense and in war would stay where it was at that time. They were not that stupid. They knew that as time progressed, firearms would become better, um, body armor would become better, the technology used in warfare would become better. They knew that. These were very intelligent men that came up with our Constitution. So to say that the Constitution only, or the Second Amendment only refers to flintlock muskets, no. It the Second Amendment was designed so that in the event that their government became despotic, they would have a means to overthrow that government, whether they elected it or not. If it became despotic, they could overthrow it. They had just come out of a war against a country that had become very heavy handed in their treatment of the colonists, forcing them to provide housing for their troops, um, taking away the firearms from the colonists so they couldn't rise up against them. That's what they came out of. The Second Amendment was designed, it's basically saying the people have the right to have and bear arms, and this right shall not be infringed. It, plain and simple. Now, as warfare developed, as means of defense developed, as firearm technology developed, it's still included in there. The people still have the right to rise up against a despotic, totalitarian regime and overthrow it. They still have that right. To try and curtail it, that's what they mean by infringe. You shall not be infringed. It shall not be infringed. And then they try and parse out different aspects of it. Well, back at that time, nobody could own a cannon. That was ridiculous to have these big weapons. Well, the fact of the matter is that private citizens did own cannons. Where did the Continental Army get a hold of their cannons when they were fighting the Revolution? Well, they came from privateers who had them on their ships. These were private citizens that owned the ships and everything on them, and the patriotic ones, took those cannon and gave them to the fledgling Continental Army. So, yes, private citizens could own cannons. They could own warships. If we would have had that technology, they would have been able to own aircraft. People today own aircraft. So to say that the Second Amendment is outdated is a fallacy because it holds true today as it did back then. Technology has changed. Um, Weapon types have changed, but the concept behind it is still the same. If we say our government became despotic and they started disarming the American citizens and and stepping on their freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, Do you think that a bunch of people with a bunch of muskets would be able to go against our modern military? No. That's where the shall not be infringed comes in, because the weaponry will change with the times. The people still have to have that right to hold the government in check. So a person today to own an AR-15, we do have laws that say you can't have automatic weapons, which, if you look at it, that's an infringement on their right also. But so they want to change it to citizens shall not own weapons of war or assault rifles. What is an assault rifle? Well, an M16. Well, the M16 is a design by Colt that was modified from the AR-15. Now, AR, oh, that's assault rifle. No. The AR in AR-15 is Armalite. It's the type of material the weapon was made out of. It was a light rifle. Well, why did they paint it black? It's scary. What's scary? This is coming from people that probably shiver in fear from a chihuahua. Scary is a relative term. Everybody has their own grade of fear. And I've known people that are fearful to walk across the street or or walk down a dark alley. It's a relative term, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. I grew up in a hunting environment. I went in the Marine Corps, and I learned what it takes to conduct a war. And I'll be the first one to say, I wouldn't wish war on anybody. I've been there, I've seen it, didn't like it, but sometimes it is necessary. If our government becomes so dictatorial that it starts disarming its citizens and hampering their freedom of speech and becomes very heavy-handed, yes, you have to put it down. You have to get rid of it. I remember during COVID, I saw videos online of these. I don't know if they were National Guardsmen or if they were actual active duty military, but they said if they were talking about martial law, making people comply through martial law. And they said, if I tell somebody to do something and we're under martial law and they refuse to do it, I'll kill them. These people don't realize they took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And as I said in an earlier video, as far as I'm concerned, the Constitution of the United States is its people. You take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, and if you're under martial law and you turn your weapon on the people of the United States, you're not defending the Constitution. You're threatening the Constitution. If you're willing to kill the people of the United States because somebody with an addled mind in Washington, D.C. says, this is what I want, that's not upholding your oath of office or your oath, military oath. You're not defending the Constitution. You're an enemy of the Constitution. And my oath says that I defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That domestic is a very key word. People say, well, that could never happen in the United States. Ask the Russians if it could have happened in 1918. Ask the Chinese if it could have happened in 1949. Ask the South Vietnamese if it could, or the North Vietnamese in 1949. Ask the Eastern Bloc countries in 1949 if it could happen. Yes, it can happen. And we've seen, supposedly um, free countries take way too many steps along that line. You look at Canada. Canada disarmed its citizens. Australia disarmed its citizens. And they were the ones that were hit the hardest during COVID because they had no means of defense. They had no way of saying to their government, back off, you've gone too far. They just had to do it. The Second Amendment is a very critical amendment because if we let go of the Second Amendment, if we get rid of the Second Amendment, what's defending all the others? Where do we say this is too much? How will we have a way to say this is too much? I'm an old Marine. I took my oath in 1984, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm still held to that oath. I will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Yes, I'm a gun owner because I believe that strongly in it. And I think we have done way too much infringing on our rights than is needed. We've infringed our rights way too much until it's hard to recognize what our right is anymore. we went through one civil war, but I think, well, I know during the last administration, I was thinking we've gone too long since 1865 to realize how many rights we have lost since then. People in 1865, they just got done with the Civil War. That was horrendous. More Americans died during that war than any war the United States has ever fought. I had ancestors in it. I had ancestors in the American Revolution fighting to start our country. And I think I am just as adamant in my beliefs as my ancestors were. I had ancestors that were from Kentucky, a slave state, who fought for the Union. They they didn't believe that one man should be able to own another. And they fought for that. Now another issue that I also had ancestors in the Confederacy, and they were, you know, maybe about 10% of the population of the South at that time owned slaves. To them, well, to those slave owners, yeah, it was about slavery. To my ancestors, it was more about a government that is doing too much. States' rights. But the Confederacy had, you know, they had the slave issue that kind of outshone all the others. So that's what we say the Civil War was about slavery. Not entirely, because you can't have that many people rising to a cause over just one issue. Everybody's going to have their own issue. My ancestors in Kentucky, they didn't see a reason for they didn't they couldn't justify one man owning another. So they fought for that. It's we've made it into an issue that on the face it's very simple. No matter whichever side you're talking about, it's very simple to them. Guns just aren't needed in today's society. Hunting's not needed. You can go to the grocery store, get whatever you want. I came from a town where the nearest grocery store was 20, 30 miles away. You didn't just say, oh, I need some eggs. Run down to the store and get some eggs. We didn't have that luxury. At least not when I was growing up. This was in the 70s. The nearest the nearest thing that resembled a grocery store was 20 miles away. You didn't just hop in the car and run over. You went every week or 2 weeks. And you had your list of what you needed, and you know bought your groceries. Otherwise, what we lived on was what we hunted or fished or sometimes picked in the woods. But the Second Amendment issue goes far beyond that. It's not just about personal survival. It's a matter of defending your home, defending your property, defending your family, and defending your country. I've got about 5 minutes left here, but we've our society has gotten to the point where we don't see a firearm as what it is. It's a tool. It's a tool with which you defend your country, you defend yourself, you defend your family, you provide food for your family. It's a tool. We have too many people in this country that see it as a source of power. They can hold their wants and desires over somebody else's by just holding that firearm. That's not what it was designed for. You can take a screwdriver and you can turn a screw and build a machine with that screwdriver. Or you can take it in another way and drive it through somebody's forehead. We've lost respect for guns. We see it as a source of power. It's not a source of power, it's a tool. I have a gun sitting in my bedroom, sitting out, broad daylight. Nobody's ever died from it. And if it's up to me, no one ever will. But if someone sees the need to press their power over me and take my stuff or threaten my family, I'll have it. And then it'll be a tool that's used for its purpose. I probably have more to expound on this subject, but I'm sadly running out of time. If you like this video, then click like. If you know, I'm trying to figure out how to monetize this so that I can, get something out of it and provide more of it if you like it. I'd love that to the cows come home. And I will be letting you know how I go on that journey. But I'd appreciate it if you give me some suggestions, ask me questions, give me comments. I want that. I told you in the last or a couple of videos ago that I love getting feedback. But time's ticking away, so I will leave it where it is until the next one, probably tomorrow. Who knows? If I get rambunctious, I might do another one tonight. It probably won't be on until tomorrow. But until then, I guess I'll say goodnight and Semper Fi.